Hello, welcome back, and as you can see, the topic of this video, this comparison, is Star Wars. The Domark conversion of the fabulous Atari arcade game from 1981, which I have played. I used to play it quite a bit on summer holidays down in Dymchurch in the arcade down there. But I'd never played any of the home versions until recently. They were, of course, all handled by Domark. ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC and BBC Micro, which I was really happy to see had a version of the game, because bear in mind this is 1987. I was completely surprised that this game came out on it, and really good to see that the BBC was still being supported from some quarters. So we're going to have a look at them all and see exactly what they're like, how they compare to each other, what their weaknesses and strengths are, and also give you an opportunity to comment on what your version was that you had when way back in the day, and what you thought of it in comparison with the other versions that you're going to see. Right, let's get on with it. ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC, and then BBC Micro bringing up the rear. Ooh. Hello, welcome back. Right, as you can see, Star Wars for the Spectrum, the Domark version. This is kicking off the gameplay segments. We're going to follow with Commodore 64, Amstrad CPC and BBC Micro. Domark handled all of them, I do believe. This music by David Whittaker, the rendition of the Star Wars theme, is the only sound in the game, believe me on that one. It's a pretty decent rendition. So let's get into it and see what it's like. So it's written by Vektor Grafix. Now, the Spectrum, a couple of years before this, did have a total rip-off that was a fantastic game called 3D Star Strike. I'm sure everyone knows that. So, first things first, which one of the two did you prefer? Did you prefer Star Wars or Star Strike? Now, what you'll see there is I've just inverted my up and down controls on this game, because that's what happens in the actual game, and it's quite disconcerting when you press up and it goes down. Right, let's get into it. Now, we all know the story of the Star Wars arcade games, one of the most loved games from the era back in the arcades. You got to blow up the Death Star. Basically, it misses out all the other bits and pieces, and it picks up as you are approaching the Death Star. You got to shoot some TIE fighters, etc. Up the top there, you'll see I've got 9 shields, and what that means is each hit decreases your shields by 1. Until you've got nothing left. I'm going easy, mate. Until you've got nothing left, and you basically die. Now, what I said about there being absolutely no sound in this game is evident here. You can sort of see, well, you can hear that you're playing it in a vacuum. Now, I know, in space, no one can hear you fart in your own flight suit, but it would have benefited from some of the old Star Wars pew pew sort of type stuff. That was my terrible rendition at Star Wars sound. Right, so here I've got a sort of these swirling patterns are fireballs being launched by the TIE fighters that are defending the Death Star from me. I don't know why they need to send so many out after me, because I am not very good at this. Right, so now everything moves all right. It's playing okay, and I don't really think I've ever actually played the Spectrum version of this. I did play the game in the arcade version a few times. Really enjoyed that. The sort of cabinet and everything, the sort of sit-down cabinet, was great. Right, there's ye olde Death Star. There's Darth Vader's TIE fighter there. He pops in a few times, but you can't destroy him. So. Right, now we're in the Death Star run itself. Just got to sort of make the way to the end of the trench and blow the thing up by hitting the exhaust port as per the movie, and then it just loops around again. Although next time round it adds the level with the towers, which isn't in this first run for some reason. I'm not sure why, but it's playing okay. Like I say, it'd be a pretty boring playthrough if I wasn't waffling all over it, because there is absolutely no sound at all. So, come on. bullseye and womp rats for fun here. Although I'm not in a T-16, I'm in an X-Wing fighter. Oh, we got it. Bye-bye, Death Star. And all who sailed in her. It's not particularly well defended, is it? It's a bit like the Starkiller base in The Force Awakens, which, despite being the size of an entire planet, only ever has about half a dozen stormtroopers on duty at a time. Right, so I've got an extra sort of bonus shield there, so I'm back up to 8 instead of 9, and we go round again. We go again. Yeah, it's not bad at all. I don't mind it. But bearing in mind, you know, Spectrum owners, we'd had Star Strike for a couple of years before the official version of Star Wars was released. I think that game is the one that's favoured more of the two, and remembered more fondly. There's Darth. Oh, yeah, got shoot. Oh, I took one there, took one for the team. So yeah, the graphics are really well presented, the sort of vector style, etc. Everything's moving okay. And we're heading back to the Death Star again. There's another bleeding Death Star. Right. So now we should be, yeah, this is the sort of shoot the towers and fireballs level. Same kind of sort of thing. You're flying across the surface of the Death Star now. Why this isn't included in the sort of first run, I don't know. But yeah, here we go. And then after this, we get to the trench run, which is now more difficult with the addition of various catwalks and stuff. That you've got to fly under and over and still avoid fireballs. Yeah, right. Come on, Baz. Yeah, this being an X-Wing pilot is a good old laugh. Easy, easy money. Ah. Right, should be back in the trench run now. Whee! That's a really nice effect when it does that. Yeah, see, as you can see, there's the sort of obstacles in the way now as well. And I have to confess, I've never actually got further than this bit on this game. Alright, well, that's the Spectrum version of Star Wars. Let me know what you think. Let's move on. Okay, welcome back. Here we are, Star Wars for the Commodore 64. That's a really nice loading screen. Exactly the same gameplay as the Spectrum version and all the other versions basically. So we'll have a look and we'll see what it's like. Right, there's the spiel. You don't get the crawl that you did in the Spectrum version. So let's pull the trigger to start. Okay, we can do that. I can pull the trigger to start. Okay, right, here we go. And first things first, you can see, yeah, it's pretty decent. It is a bit slower than the Spectrum version, I think, but not horribly slower. It doesn't sort of break the game at all. You can tell by the movement of the sort of star field in the background. It was a lot smoother on the Spectrum version than you see in here. But yeah, it is noticeably slower, but it's playing really nicely. I've played this for about 20 minutes now. I apologise, I'm having terrible problems with this camera lately. It's tending to make things, particularly Commodore games, look really washed out. even though through the sort of viewfinder, that sort of thing, the screen, I can see that it's looking okay. When the actual sort of video comes out, it's not in the best condition. And you know, I've tried various things to do it. Well, it's only a cheapo camera I got from Cash Converters about 3 years ago, you know, and I think it was old then. Probably time to invest in a new one. But yeah, I mean, going back to Star Wars, yeah, it's not playing a bad game at all. So Commodore fans, did you have this back in the day for your machine? And what did you think of it, importantly? It's by no means a bad game. Right, now this bit here, I've sort of found out that if I just sort of hang around in the middle, very little actually sort of comes within range of you and hits you. Until I get to the exhaust port ahead and then blow the thing up. But yeah, it's not a bad version at all. Playable enough. I think you'd have been happy as a Commodore 64 owner to have had this. If you were a fan of the arcade game, you know, it's not messed up in any way, shape or form. But like I say, is significant, well, fairly noticeably slower than the other version, the Spectrum version, which we've just seen. So come on, let's get to it. Right, exhaust port is just there, and I missed it. Oh, you fucker! Right, I've got to go through all that again. Oh, that's a load of bollocks, isn't it? Ah. Oh, I don't think I've got the job. I don't think I've got the job at all. Oh dear, copped an unfortunate one there. You see, most of these things are just missing me. Come on. Yeah. You know, there are far worse games I've played than this. This is actually quite good. Come on, exhaust port. Getting a bit bored now. Yay, got it that time. I really like that explosion effect that you see on the Commodore 64 version. Right, okay, let's try and head back to the next version. Bye. Hello, welcome back. Right, here we go with Star Wars for the Amstrad. Is just loading up there. Really nice loading screen on this one. It takes about 15 to 20 seconds, perhaps a little bit longer to load. So Amstrad owners, please shout up with what your memories, etc. of this game are, whether or not you had it and enjoyed it, or if not, if this is the first time that you're playing it. Now, it's beseeching me to not stop the tape there. Of course, I'm using my DDI to USB 3 thing from Zaxxon, which is an absolute godsend. And here we go. Right, we're into it. Really nice rendition of the Star Wars theme there. Very nice screen that. You can hear they've given someone a trombone to play, and it's obviously his first lesson because he's not doing too good. But other than that, it's quite a nice rendition. Right, so yeah, those controls are good for me. Let's get into it. Now we've got the same kind of thing that we had with the Spectrum version. Obviously the colours, you can see the Starfield is red in colour as opposed to white on the Spectrum, and I think it was red on the Commodore as well. So let's get into it. We've got the same old crawl going there. Now we're gonna go easy. Right, first things first, yes, a welcome addition is sound, and it's quite decent sound effects that are going through it. And everything is, there's Darth, everyone's favourite Sith Lord turned good. Yeah, it's playing really nicely. Nice and colourful. Like I say, there's some good sound effects at play in this game. and they really are welcome. I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think this might be playing a little bit slower than the Spectrum version. I think so. It's not. It doesn't break anything though. It's still a pretty decent playable game, really. Come on. Die. Oh, there's Darth again. There, you can have a few just in case. I know I can't kill you, but never mind. Right, down into the trench run. Now, the little cheat that I showed you on the C64 version don't work on this one. I tried it and failed on my first sort of run of this. Now, yeah, I think you can see from this segment of the game it is a little bit slower than the Spectrum version. But it's a really playable game. It's not bad conversion at all. Oh, shield's going down. Oops, a daisy. Stay on target. Stay on target. Now, there we go. There we go. So yeah, that's Star Wars on the Amstrad. It's a really decent conversion. I quite enjoy it, and the addition of sound to it really is very welcome. Like I said on the Spectrum version, that kind of not breaks the game, but sort of detracts from it a bit. Right, okay, let's move on. Hello, welcome back. Right, going to look at the BBC Micro version of Elite Star Wars by Domark from back in the day. So I was totally unaware that this was out on the BBC Micro, but there we go. It's really nice loading screen there. Bit jaundiced, our main characters look, but still recognisable. No Star Wars music on this. Right, so let's get into the game. Do I want to change those controls? Yes, I do. Right, so I want my usual. Do I want to change them? No. Do I want sound? Yeah, I'll have sound on this, I think. Because we already saw the Spectrum version didn't have sound at all. Right. So here we go, Star Wars for the BBC Micro from Domark. Now, I'm going to have to say, this is probably the fastest of all the versions. And when I first sort of tried to play it, it was really a little bit tricky. But I got the hang of it eventually, he says, and then just starts dying. The sounds on it are... you know, those sort of, as you can hear, like sort of lightsabery sounds, but they do get a little bit irritating after a while, I must admit. But it's playing sort of decently enough, but like I said, really fast. Now, the graphics and everything are decent. Now, the cheat doesn't work on this one either, so I've got to sort of avoid. It says avoid catwalks, but there aren't any. Not that I've seen in this anyway. Oh dear, in this one anyway. When I had a run through of it, yeah, I was totally surprised to see that there was a version for the BBC Micro, and a decent version. Because once you've got over sort of the speed of it compared to the other ones, it's actually really quite enjoyable. Yes, there are sort of sacrifices made because it's the BBC, and there are certain things that it can't sort of do. That, you know, there's no sort of like theme music, etc. The graphics are much chunkier than on the other versions, but they being slung around at quite a considerable rate. And that actually makes it sort of quite exciting. you know, not a bad game at all. And there is also the sequel, Empire Strikes Back, on the BBC Micro as well. It's on the card. So if I ever get round to doing that game, a sort of comparison versions video of the Empire Strikes Back, I'll make sure to sort of check the BBC version out too. But this is playing really well. Apart that sound, that noise is really annoying though. Right, here we go. And now we're on the sort of tower sort of bit where you go. Oh, yeah, this is moving along. It's a bit jerky, but you know, it's still really, really good. Like I say, it's probably the ropiest looking out of the three. Sorry, out of the four. But it's playing really, really well. Oh, my shields are fucked. Oh, right, there we go. That was the BBC Micro version of Star Wars from Domark. Really, really surprising. Okay, now to the outro. Okay, so there we have it. All pretty decent conversions, really. The Spectrum version was really good. Moved nice and quickly. Graphics were very clear, nice and clear. Vectors were well defined. But the lack of sound, yeah, even on the 128K I had Spectaculator running in 128K mode, apart from the main title tune, nothing, and it really kind of detracts from the game, I think, and it's a shame because it is a good game. It's a very, very competent conversion. The Commodore 64 version, yeah, had decent sound, etc. I'd say it was quite a bit slower than the Spectrum version. The graphics were blockier, but it had sound effects and stuff going on. A really good SID rendition of the Star Wars theme tune there. But overall, it still played really well. Now, I know Vektor Grafix games aren't the Commodore 64's strong point, but that wasn't bad. You know, it was perfectly playable. I think if I'd have been a Commodore 64 owner back in the day and I got that, I wouldn't have been unhappy with it. The Amstrad version was really, really nice. Nice and colourful. But again, a little bit slower than the Spectrum version, I found. But it still played really, really, really well. And the BBC Micro version, well, I was really surprised by that. That was to start with, when I first started playing it, I was surprised how insanely fast it was. The sounds on it are a little bit annoying. There is an option to toggle them on and off, but you know, I criticised the Spectrum version for not having any sound whatsoever, so I kept them on in that, and it was a little bit. They got a little bit to be a bit of a pain in the backside after a while. But overall, I thought all four versions were really, really, really nice. Very, very competent. And worthy additions to your collection if you ever had them back in the day, and certainly worth checking out. Now, I've never played The Empire Strikes Back. I do have the Spectrum version of Return of the Jedi that Domark released. Domark released all the Star Wars games. But yeah, comment what your memories are, what you thought of those games. If you like the video, please let me know. But if you wish, wish to subscribe, please do so. But if you do subscribe, please, 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 as ever, take the time to join in the discussion, because that's a lot of fun. Take care.